Jai Hind. A big news is coming now for India. India's all-time all-weather friend Russia has now came forward to assist India in their aspiration, in their dream to prepare a fifth generation fighter aircraft. At the time when India has also launched their fifth generation fighter aircraft program, which might take up at least a decade to get up operational. In this, the Russian side has now come up with a global interesting news. A recent report from Russia had suggested that the Russian United Aircraft Corporation has obtained a patent for a Su-57 two-seater fighter aircraft. Now, this implies that in near future we may witness the debut of a two-seater version of Su-57, and just remember, this would be the second two-seater fighter aircraft after the J-20. So this will be a two-seater fifth generation fighter aircraft after J-20, and this is something which is very intriguing. Okay, the original Su-57 Felon is something similar to this. Okay, now as per the expected images, the new Su-57 is coming up, wherein they have accommodated one more pilot into this. Okay, and the best part is that the Russian agencies have openly admitted that this has been done purely to accommodate the demands of India. The other important part around the same is this time this two-seater fighter aircraft would not be used for training pilots. So this would not be used as a trainer, but this would be used for deep strike capabilities. Clear? So Russian aerospace industry has revealed that the Su-57 two-seater fighter jet will be the world's second fifth generation fighter aircraft after J-20s, and the purpose for which it will be used is the long range strikes and drone control. Clear? So this will provide the Russian aerospace forces with much needed stealth strike capabilities at the theater level. Okay, now this is something that becomes very important. So even though more models and more updates about this program has not yet been revealed, but this is something which would help the Indians to start to resume their fifth generation fighter aircraft ambition that has already been shelved. Okay, so in fact the concept of this two-seater Su-57 was proposed very early when it was known as the PACFA. Okay, so this PACFA was the original code name of the Sukhoi T-50. Now, due to the very high development cost of the fifth generation stealth fighters, Russia now wanted a collaboration with India. However, India at that time had insisted that a version of its fifth generation aircraft must be a two-seater. Okay, Russia had agreed to India's request, and now they have decided to develop a two-seater fifth generation fighter aircraft along with a single-seater Su-57 Falcon. Okay, which is being developed for the Indian Air Force. So that is already in news. Now, this news also becomes important because India, on one hand, when they are actually thinking of developing their own fifth generation fighter aircraft, AMCA, in this situation, it would take another decade for India to operationalize it. In such a situation, the gaps can be readily filled by what Russia has been providing to us. Okay, so now in this situation, this directly links back to the now defunct fifth generation fighter aircraft program, and in some way we are now forced to think that is this the Russian way of bringing India back to the negotiating table when India is slightly inclined towards the United States and has been also looking forward to the F-35s. Clear? So when we go ahead with this news, Russia has unveiled a two-seater Okay, variant of Su-57 fifth generation stealth fighter. The prototype's maiden flight was made recently in the late May. Okay, and Russian reports openly admit that the design was fundamentally shaped by India's original requirement for a two-seater fifth generation fighter aircraft. Now, the very existence of this variant is a direct effort by Russia to revive the shelved Indo-Russian fifth generation fighter aircraft program that was initially started as a joint venture, but India shelved it in 2018. Clear? So it essentially becomes important. Okay. Now, this news has effectively came up in various news articles. Okay. And along with it, a image of a speculated Su-57 prototype has already been put up. Clear? So when we discuss that, what essentially would be the changes, okay? So what happened is that in May 2026, okay, Russia recently, just a few days back, Russia flew a two-seat variant of Su-57, and that was flown by the a very famous flight, the test pilot of the Sukhoi aircraft. Okay, now this development becomes more significant, okay, because the Russian sources have openly stated that the design was shaped due to India's original demands. Okay, so when we talk about the original Su-57 Falcon, okay, which was Russia's own stealth fighter, okay, now when we have a look at the specifications which are available, okay, let us understand how original Su-57 Falcon will work. Okay, it is a twin engine stealth fighter, and the first flight had been done in 2010. Okay, now it had entered into Russian service in 2020, and the only reason why people have not been believing Su-57 because other than Russia, no other air force has been using this. Clear? Now, this key feature of this aircraft, okay, it includes a super cruise mode. Okay, now this includes a super cruise mode, okay, which is a supersonic flight without the use of afterburners. Okay, now, in this aircraft, advanced thrust vector engines have been used, and this aircraft is said to be very high on extreme maneuverability. Okay, the internal weapons will be preserved. Will also preserve the stealth profile of this aircraft. However, the original aircraft, which is a single seat aircraft, okay, and it had been a deal breaker for India. Clear? So what Russia has changed, let us now dive deep into it. Okay. Now the key technology of this Su-57 is the stealth technology, super cruise flight, that is without afterburner, super maneuverability with 3D thrust vectoring, advanced AESA radar, and the integrated avionics. Okay. Now, why India had initially ignored this? Let us also understand that why India has initially ignored it. And you will understand this through a timeline, okay, that FGFA exit that took place in 2018, okay, and then came the conception of the India's AMCA, and US 535 was also being explored by Indians. Clear? So, it was during this time that India in 2018, India had walked away out of this. Okay. Now, India wanted a two-seat configuration while Russia was pushing for a single seat. Russia has now reversed its position. Concerns about stealth performance not being competitive against the US F-22 or the Chinese J-20. Now, the high cost and insufficient technology transfer limited India's control over this platform. Clear? Moreover, what US was offering us, okay, the AMCA program, India is developing its own indigenous fifth generation fighter aircraft, but it is not expected before the mid 2030s. So somewhere around 2035, 2036, that would be coming. To fill this gap, India has actively explored Western options, including the Rafale and even the US aircraft like the F-15X and F-35 with offers of technology and local production. So these have been the offers that were put up by USA, and this is something that has put Russia into a difficult position. Okay, so it was the time after leaving the fifth generation fighter aircraft program in between. Okay, India decided to focus on its own AMCA. Okay, but that would not be ready by 2030s. To fill up this gap, okay, India had started exploring the US. Okay, but eventually, okay, the tactic, okay, if I call it a tactic, then it worked in favor of India. Clear? So what are the conspirators behind it? What are the Russian long games? Okay, so if we understand it, okay, the theory that Russia never truly abandoned the FGFA and is now bending to India's demands. Clear? So one more thing that comes up is that few defense analysts also say that there is a conspiracy theory behind it. Okay, and to make it more clear, we must understand the speculations that were based upon some sequence of events. Okay, if we say that Russia has truly never left this fifth generation fighter aircraft program, they in that situation itself, meanwhile, they had also been developing a two-seat variant in secret. Okay, waiting for the right moment to strike, and the right moment is now. Now, why it is the right moment? Because India is looking elsewhere to the US, so Russia has done a complete pivot. Okay, now they have bent to India's original demand, and they have now built exactly what India was demanding. Now, in the Su-57 twin engine aircraft, Russia is also offering full technology transfer for local production. Okay, something that US will never ever give to India for the F-35. Now, the message is very clear. Will that Russia is now ready to say that we will give you everything which the Western countries will never give you. Clear? So this is something that is now working in favor of India. Okay. Now, if we talk about how this aircraft will make India powerful, okay, the immediate need. China has deployed over 200 J-20s near the Indian border and is projected to have 1,000 by 2030. Pakistan is set to procure Chinese J-35. The Su-57 is the only realistic option to counter rapidly emerging stealth threat. Okay. Secondly, it will act as a force multiplier. The second crew member is not just a trainer. Now, this is something to be seen. In the new variant, they can act as drone commander. They can control a swarm of loyal wingman drones like Russia's S-70, changing the nature of air combat. Clear? So, when this Su-57 twin-seater is not merely for training, okay, the co-pilot will also be into a commanding position for long range strikes and also for controlling the drones or to counter the drones. Okay. Now, in this situation, Russia is offering access to the Su-57 source code, a move no other nation, including US, has offered. This gives India autonomy to integrate its own weapons and systems. Now, why India essentially wants it? Okay, because in Russian systems like S-400 also, the Indians have integrated their own radars. Okay, own systems. This is the reason why S-400 has proved better for us in comparison to even the Russia. Okay. Secondly, make in India and a sovereignty. Now, proposal includes licensed production by the HAL in India, which will boost the local aerospace industry and would also create jobs in India. Okay. Now, if we also assume one more thing, that India accepts this offer, okay, this offer is not just making India powerful immediately, it is also it is also simplifying the urgent threat that is coming to us. Secondly, it is also proving financially beneficial and also for the our long range concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Okay, the question comes that why Russia is bending over backwards to help India. What is Russian need? Okay, the Russian ultimate need is the economic survivor. So Russia's arm export shares have fallen sharply due to sanctions, war cost, and competition. To counter China's rise, China's J-20 fleet has surpassed Russia's Su-57 fleet in quantity as well as quality, and China is now rival defense exporters to India. Clear? So basically, it is not merely a game of security or not merely a game of friendship. It is now more or less a game of economic competitiveness. Clear? So Russia wants to make no mistake. Okay, this is not friendship. This is just a self-interest. Okay, primarily to counter the collapsing economic condition, collapsing the defense exports. Okay, this is also strategic realignment. The US is increasing defense ties with India, threatening Russia's long-term position. This would test bed for future technology. Now, Russia needs a partner to fund and co-develop advanced systems, and Russia is now looking towards India to have a similar situation with us. Clear? Along with this, how this Su-57 offer addresses it. Okay, India is Russia's single largest arms customer, accounting for 48% of total arms export. Arming India with Su-57 helps maintain a balance of power on China's borders, serving Russia's strategic interest to hedge against a rising Beijing. Clear? Moreover, this mega deal with full technology transfer pulls India back into Moscow's orbit. So this is the better thing. Okay. Now Russians think that by this India will be now dependent over the Russians. Clear? So Russia is bending because it has got no choice. Okay. Russia is bending because Russia has to serve its own interest. Okay. And ultimately we can also understand that this is majorly a key trade-off. Okay. So while we conclude this, okay, this new twin-seater Su-57 is a remarkable strategic concession. Okay, and by Russia finally agreeing to India's demands, okay, that now looks something that they wanted all along. Clear? So this aircraft on one hand would bridge the gap until the AMCA of India is ready. Okay, and this would also provide us with a credible fifth generation fighter aircraft within a few years only and not decades. Clear? So this is something that the Indians are now eyeing, and this is something that Indians are now looking forward. Clear? Moreover, we can also understand one more thing around the same. Okay, that by by these decisions that have been taken, okay, for a very long duration, Indian Air Force demand for a twin-seater fifth generation fighter aircraft was not just based upon the foresight, okay, but it was primarily based upon the experiences the Indian Air Force had with the Su-30s, okay, and they believed that the heavy aircraft should be operated by two pilots so as to maintain situational awareness. Okay, now this is something that is better. This is something that the Indian pilots have learned in a better way. Okay, due to the enormous size of the Su-30 MKI. Okay, and similar for Su-57 aircraft, the Indian pilots are of the opinion that for a better situational awareness in an air combat, the aircraft must be equipped with a two fighter system, two pilot system. Clear? Moreover, the ability to alternate during the long range patrols and the capacity for the rear seat to handle weapon systems during the ground strikes will always act beneficial. Okay. Moreover, if we talk about the single seater, okay, single seater aircraft has got its own advantages, but this is something that was initially demanded by the Indian Air Force pilots. Okay, moreover, in this entire deal, okay, when it had started the fifth generation fighter aircraft program, India had later realized that it was merely a cash cow in this project. Okay, because Russia refused to allow access to the core technology. Now, India thinks that after investing $1 billion, India would not be getting the entire technology. Okay, and this was the primary reason why India has withdrew from the project. And it was then that the both parties had amicably parted ways out of this project. Okay, so the Russian aerospace forces continued the development of single-seater Su-57 fighter aircrafts, and still, okay, they were they were continuously persuading India to buy their aircraft. Clear? So by this, they ultimately, okay, by now pivoting onto the two-seater system, okay, The primary reasons is that one is the combat experience that Russians have also gained from the Ukraine conflict. Okay. So this Su-57 is not primarily the Indian demand. It also lies in the Russian experience in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Okay, in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the performance of Russian aerospace forces was unexpectedly poor. Okay, and they struggled to suppress the Ukrainian air defense system, which had ultimately limited their ground attacks and also their capabilities to engage in the close air support operations. Okay, ultimately, they had understood that the inadequate frequency of Russian aerospace forces deployments, okay, the Ukrainian Air Force defenses with the Western support had successfully evaded the Russian aerospace forces strike capabilities. Okay, so although this Su-57 stealth fighter aircraft was deployed, but it was insufficient. Okay, and they did not achieve their full operational capabilities. Clear? So by moving on to a two-seater system, Russia for itself is also is also undertaking a course correction that they had learnt after this Russia-Ukraine conflict. Okay, so they also want to improve their tactical strike capabilities, and they also want to perform at their best of the best capabilities. Clear? So I hope all of you would have understood this. Okay, so this has been a very major news, okay, wherein the Russian Aerospace Agency has now understood to acknowledge the Indian demands, and the Russian aerospace forces have now decided to build a twin-seater Su-57 aircraft categorically for India, but ultimately their learning experiences also lies in this course correction. Clear? So please do let me know in the comment section, how do you look at this deal? How do you look at this pivot that has been done? Okay. Moreover, also do let me know in the comment section that was this situation a do or die situation for India as well as Russia, or was it only for India? Okay, so this was all from my side today. I hope all of you would have enjoyed this piece of information. We'll keep coming up with more such information. Jai Hind.